slots. So it's a highly competitive market, and universities just like us, the Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Berkeley, all of them are dealing with hundreds of thousands of applicants for 2,000 or 3,000 slots. So the key to get started is really the test score and GPA right now. Some universities are getting sophisticated by saying, you know what, the standardized tests aren't an accurate measure of student performance in K through 12. So we're going to look at other characteristics. In some cases, like Wake Forest, they have decided they're not going to look at standardized tests at all. So they look at a number of criteria to get students admitted. So the outreach component is critically important. And our outreach component, it deserves a lot of work, right? So we have a lot of students in the pipeline throughout the United States that we can do a lot more work with. USC visits about 2,200 high schools every year to recruit students from all over the United States and around the world. But there's a lot of work to be done to attract African-American male or female student talent. Because, like we mentioned, the students who get into these applicant pools at some of the major universities, they can go anywhere in the United States. So it's like a recruiting battle to get some of the best talent throughout the United States. So there are a lot of opportunities and there's a lot of work to be done. I also think there's some space in thinking globally about this. And I'm not speaking as USC or UCLA right now, but we have to think about how many students want to go to college, and then how do we make sure they all have a chance, whether it's USC or UCLA or somewhere else. USC isn't for everybody, as much as I would like to think so. Nor is UCLA or any other school. We have a lot of schools that are ready to receive these students, and how do we make sure all of these students have a chance to go to college if they want to? And the key barrier for a number of students is the financial aid component. So how do we make sure we have a comprehensive financial aid package that supports students as they go to college wherever they want to go throughout the United States? I don't think any one school has figured it out yet in regards to the recruitment of any one particular ethnic minority group. A lot of schools are trying really hard. It is a competitive battle to get the talented students that we need. But I think globally there's a space for us to think about how do we make sure all students have a chance to go to the colleges and have the aid and academic support they need to be successful.
Well, I think you alluded to the next question that I would like to ask, and I guess it's about readiness. And Dr. Alexander, you mentioned increasing the applicant pool for African American students. So Dr. Yao, working with high school, can you speak to this issue of readiness for African American students? We have a number of parents and K-12 students out here. So can you speak to that?
Definitely. And I'm excited to be here. I grew up in Ghana. My parents were not educated. And when I went to the school system, the graduation requirements were set. The floor was so high. It's rigorous. My parents didn't have to know how to prepare me for college. The schools had standards that allowed me, so far as I could stay and graduate from high school, to automatically be part of the pipeline. Came here 22 years ago, taught at Manual's High School, was amazed to see that there was this disparity between high school diploma and college readiness. Now, 2012, only 29% of African American students who graduate in this state complete the entrance requirement, the minimum entrance requirement to apply to a four-year university. Now, why is this so important? Research by the U.S. Department of Education has shown that the one most important pre-collegiate factor that allows students to succeed once they get into university is the rigor of the classes that they took in high school. Now, if only 29% of African American students are in the pool, we have a problem. Now, 63% of Asians in this state complete the A-G requirements. Now, is that a surprise to us when you go to UC Berkeley and about 50% of the population are Asian Americans? And we're not talking about international students, we're talking about domestic people here. We are not in the pool. When you look at the fact that 50% of our students are dropping out, and you have 29%, it tells you that out of every 100 students who start kinder or preschool up to high school, you have only about 13 of them who complete rigorous classes that allows them to go to a 4-year university. And I get this all the time about, oh, they can go to community college. Now, when they go to community college, are they doing college work or they are doing remedial work? And that is where the problem begins. So 11 years ago, when I founded New Designs with the support of people like Lloyd McKinney, we said one thing, that our minimum graduation requirements was going to exceed the entrance requirement to the UCs. And that's what we did with math. Our minimum entrance requirement is pre-calculus. No student is complaining about that. 2 years ago, a year ago, our students in chemistry, every 10th grader has to do a chemistry at New Designs. And our chemistry students from this community are scored Beverly Hills High School. And these are 10th grade students. And they don't complain about it. We the adults are the ones saying they cannot do it. When we set up the systems, we will correct this deficiency. And I'm sick and tired of seeing our kids at the bottom all the time. So we as a school system have to take some responsibility. And we take responsibility by saying that this is the minimum entrance requirement. It aligns with college readiness, and we are here to support you to accomplish just that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, I have been squirming in my seat. I feel like I want to have a conversation with the previous two panels. But I'll try to stick to the question at hand. I agree 100% that the expectations that we have of our students is one of the huge problems that we need to overcome. There was a study done by the SCLC almost 30 years ago, and they identified 3 problems that were impacting the underachievement of our students. The first they folks spoke to a little bit earlier, which is the barriers within the school system to achievement, institutional barriers, perceptions of black students, etc. The second factor that they identified was the lack of resources and support for students to achieve, and then the third was low expectations. And I think we've tried to focus a little bit on raising those expectations. But when we talk about getting our students college ready, on the one hand, there is the task of making sure that they achieve at the highest level that allows them to be competitive when they do apply to college. But on the other hand, I think we fail from the very beginning. And when I say we fail from the very start, I work with students who, at every age, they will tell you they are going to college. They expect to go to college. They want to go to college. Folks say that college isn't for everyone, but our students have not gotten that message because to a 90th percentile, they believe they're going to college in the 9th grade. They have no idea what the requirements are to get to college. They don't know how much the game has changed. And sadly, I will tell you that most of the parents that I work with, in fact, most of the community organizations that I work with, do not understand the system of higher education in the state of California. They don't know the difference between a UC and a CSU. They don't know the difference between a private institution and a public institution. They're unfamiliar with the phrase PWI and HBCU and HSI. We have to, first of all, make students and parents more aware of the choices, the options that they have, and the wide range of requirements and levels of expectation to be admitted to any one of those campuses. What I found with my students, I have a rubric for them. You will apply to at least 10 campuses. So right now, let's start listing which campuses those 10 may be. You'll apply to at least a couple of HBCUs. You will apply to at least 4 UCs. You will apply to at least 4 CSUs. You will apply to at least 2 in-state campuses, in-state private campuses. That gets them familiar with their choices. They are literally unfamiliar with the choices of colleges that they have to apply to. So if we start there, their expectation is raised by that alone. Their understanding of the system is raised by that because they can understand the structure of higher education and they start looking at different types of requirements and what's expected of them. And then as the gentleman to my right just shared, making sure that we are not lowering our expectation of the courses that they can take and be successful in. Raising the bar in terms of what they should be taking and encouraging them to have the highest expectation of what they can learn. The last thing I'll say, and this is kind of related to the previous panel, but I'll just have to apologize for that. We talked about distinguishing, how black students can distinguish themselves from other students. And the real answer there, in my opinion, my work with students over the last 25 years, is in helping them to be who they are. They are very distinctive and very distinguished from most of the students coming in. The question is, can they articulate that? Do they know the strengths of their past experiences, their life challenges, their leadership experiences, which they are disproportionately given to? They're disproportionately involved in community service. Are they aware of the value of that? Can they articulate the value of that in a college application? So I have four mantras that I share with my students, and I think if we can focus them around these four ideas, they can then use these and apply these principles to their K through 12 education, and they can apply it to their college application. The four are self-education, knowing yourself, knowing who you are, knowing your own background, the strengths and weaknesses of it, how it has enabled you and how it has disadvantaged you. Secondly, self-advocacy. We are powerful self-advocates. This is part of the way that we become very articulate, because we find at some point that we've got to speak up for ourselves if we're going to get anything. But we should be training our students to advocate for themselves effectively. They should understand the structure, the steps of self-advocacy, what options they have when they're advocating for themselves. Third, service. Again, we're disproportionately involved in service, but we don't always understand the value of the service. Students taking care of their younger brothers and sisters at home, students involved in their churches, students involved in their communities. How do we then help them understand the educational value of that, and how do we help them understand how to articulate what they've gained from that in a college application? And lastly, organizing. Organizing among their peers. Our students, whether they are in a formal club or organization, I can tell you right now, at any high school campus, everybody is in some type of clique or club or organization or group. And it will amaze you if you go through one of the exercises I do with them from the very start, which is to name all of the cliques and groups at your school. Yeah, the folks who are familiar with high school students are laughing about that. It's a list of names you may or may not want to become familiar with. But nevertheless, it gives you an idea of how often and how consistently they come together and they organize one another. How do we get those clubs and organizations focused in some way on education? We challenged a group of students at Crenshaw High to claim every name that they listed. So every clique, they had to divide them up. These are your cliques, these are your cliques, these are your groups, and at lunchtime,